Good morning, Team Alabama. We are going to start with Chapter 5 in Stuck in Neutral. Again, this is Chapter 5 for Stuck in Neutral. Go ahead and open that on your Epic Reads. Chapter 5 is page 24, and Epic Reads is www.epicreads.com. Or you may find this book on www.24symbols.com or www.scribed.com. So you're looking for Stuck in Neutral by Terry Truman, and we're on Chapter 5. Reminder that good readers talk to themselves while they're reading a book, and they think, okay, what is it that we're learning? And they write those facts down. So you've got your Google Doc open. You're writing new facts as you read each day. You're writing questions that come to you. You think, oh gosh, I wonder, is Dad really going to kill Sean? That's a question that I have. So you're writing those questions, and you're writing those new vocab words or words that you don't know as you come across them. What's new today that we're going to learn is in the italics at the start of Chapter 5 is the poem that Sean described at the end of Chapter 4. And he said that Dad became famous for writing a poem about him. And his dad is Sidney E. McDaniel, this famous poet. And so the poem is going to start out each chapter. And it's going to be in italics. And that's how you know that that's what this is. So this is, in essence, the hook for this chapter. Like we talked about in your writing, when you write your own autobiography, this author is using that poem as a hook. Okay? And we are going to talk a little bit about how the author is organizing this story. Okay, and we'll talk about that in the next couple of days. Chapter 5. Lindy felt the early tugs, her womb becoming tidal and loud. Tidal might be a word you want to add to your vocab. Tidal, T-I-D-A-L, from page 24. The fetus, turning crying out, a tiny beast, a braying sigh. Braying might be another word you want to add. Braying. He calls to her. He calls to her. I dream hard the dream of knowing him. The baby boy coming to us, a single bird, small, leaps inside my chest, turning a pure spirit to pure joy as we watch crying. Sean. He becomes Sean now. And that bird inside me, wings free too, wings and wings its way inside me. I love the beginning of Dad's poem. What's not to love? Who wouldn't enjoy being a witness at his own birth? I love the sound of his words, and I love, most of all, how happy and excited my dad was, and how grateful and full of hope at that moment when I arrived. Of course, that's just the start of the poem. Everything soon changed. Basically, the poem tells about how Dad was never able to deal with my condition, with the pain that he thinks that I experienced during my seizures. That's probably one of the reasons that he thinks it's all right, even necessary, to kill me. Another is that he thinks that I'm a veg. God, I've always loved that veg thing. You've all said it. You know you have. So-and-so is just a vegetable. The first couple times I heard people saying that, I couldn't figure out what they were talking about. Humans turning into vegetables? It sounded like a horror movie. I wondered exactly what kind of vegetable were the people becoming. If it was a redheaded guy, did he turn into a carrot? If it was a cranky Republican lady, did she become a turnip? A gay person into a pink grapefruit? And what kind of people became avocados or zucchini or summer squash? In my Father's eyes, if I'm a vegetable, a human vegetable, I'll never be able to enjoy life or be productive. I'll never be able to win a Pulitzer Prize, go on a talk show, meet the Pope, or have lunch at the White House. I'll never be in the People magazine with a 3-page story about my life. I'll never attend the Academy Awards or have dinner with Clint Eastwood or be hired to write a narrate a documentary on the tragic plight of orphan children in Romania. I'll never be able to do any of the stuff that Sidney E. McDaniel has gotten to do. So what's the point of my being here if I can't be like him? Do we all need to be like somebody? No, we're unique. What are some new facts that we know about the book right now? Add some of those. Add 2 things to your facts. Okay. This makes it sound like the only reason my dad would kill me are selfish ones. Honestly, I don't believe that Dad wants to kill me to save me from suffering. He's afraid that I'm trapped and in pain. He wants to kill me because he loves me. He enjoys the success that he's had, but it hasn't helped him forget that he's my dad and therefore responsible for me. Sean, the story poem, has done just the opposite of helping him get over me. Think about it. Dad's fame has made him a professional victim of our relationship. His pain over me is the foundation of his career. If you could hear my dad read the poem aloud like I have, you'd understand. I attended the premiere reading 2 years ago at the Kindle Mansion. The building used to be a kind of power station back in the old days when Seattle had electric trolley cars. The Kindles bought the place from the city years ago, pumped a couple $100,000 into it, and voila! They had a mansion with 60-foot high ceilings and 14,800 square feet of space. I overheard Mom telling Cindy and Paul that Mary Kindle had long been a supporter of the Seattle art scene, and that, as a friend of Dad's publisher, she offered her home for Dad's reading. Okay, let's talk for a minute about the setting. The setting is where the story takes place. Okay, so where does this story take place? A city? Yes, it takes place in Seattle. But where in Seattle does it take place? Well, most of what we've heard so far is at Sean's house. Okay, so most of this story is taking place at Sean's house in Seattle. And that's what the setting is, the time and the place the story takes place. And how is this going to impact the plot or the problem of the story? Okay, the plot of the problem right now is what? Dad wants to kill Sean. Okay, so how is that? We've got plot starts out with an exposition, and then we've got rising action, the climax of the story, and then falling action, and then how it resolves itself. So that's a plot. And so we're learning more about that, and we'll talk more about that in later days. Page 27. I'm sure my mom didn't want to go, but I guess she felt that she had to. Dad had already read the poem to her in the kitchen earlier in the week, and I had been in my bedroom 2 rooms away and able to hear only parts of it and then the sounds of them crying afterwards. Maybe Mom thought that she owed it to Dad to be there at the first public reading. She dressed up that night in a classy, pretty black dress and pearls. She looked beautiful. Unfortunately, she dressed me in dark slacks, running shoes. I can't even walk. A white shirt, a blue blazer, and a god-awful, ridiculous bow tie. Geez, I looked like Bing Bong the Idiot Puppet Boy. When the reading started, I got parked in the kitchen in my wheelchair, out of eyeshot of an audience of 200 of Seattle's artsiest, fartsiest folks. When Dad finished reading, an explosion of applause filled the room. All through the poem, I'd heard people crying and blowing their noses, but the volume of applause at the end felt amazingly loud. I jerked in my chair, brainstem reflex, so sharply that the young waiter who'd been serving hors d'oeuvres and wine before the reading flinched in his chair next to mine. Guys, hors d'oeuvres is a really good word to add to your vocab right here, and it's on page 27 at the bottom. And it looks really awkward in how you would pronounce it. It looks like horse d'oeuvres. Okay, so it's hors d'oeuvres, and it's fancy party food that's served like before a meal, but it's very fancy party food. So if under the definition you want to put fancy party food, that's totally fine. And usually it's not like a main course. It's not like a lot of food that you would eat. It's just like that, a fancy snack right before you get ready to have the main meal to kind of tide you over. Okay, bottom of page 27, we're going to keep going. He glanced at me, and my eyes focused on his face. He was handsome and kind-looking, with dark skin and black eyes, and I could tell that he knew that I was the kid in the poem and that he felt sorry for me. I remember wishing at that time that I could be him, anonymous. Anonymous would be a good word to put in there also in your vocab. And quiet, in charge of my own life. But no sooner had the applause begun to quiet down than here came my mom, her eyes and nose all red, and she walked to the back of my wheelchair and she rolled me into the living room, and everyone applauded again. Then all these strangers began to come up to me and pat my shoulder and my head and my neck, or my back, sorry. And they all smiled at me. Bing bong, in my drool encrusted red bow tie. Encrusted would be a great word to add to your vocab also. If that bow tie is just caked, encrusted, or caked with drool. Okay, so encrusted means caked. His red bow tie is full of drool. It's encrusted. The whole scene felt terrible. Being celebrated for something you are not, being completely misunderstood by people who think that they're being understanding is awful. The people who approached me that evening may have meant well, but they were annoying. The only part of it I liked was the one lady with the huge breasts, wearing a low-cut red dress. She leaned over and her almost falling out. Her hands touching my face and her eyes cooing, and I wanted her to stay right there. My eyes even cooperated for a change, but soon she stood up and went on her way. Most of the rest of the strangers surrounded me and talked about me as though I weren't there, and for them, I actually wasn't. The me they talked about, the Sean in the poem, is not the real me. Not even the me my family knows. The kid in the poem is just some cute little red-headed named Sean with my dad's imagination. The Sean in the poem, my father's version of me, is a paper-thin imaginary Sean. A two-dimensional version of my dad's worst nightmare. It's one thing not to be known for who I actually am, but to be known for who I've never been by a room full of strangers was the worst. For all of my irritation at the world premiere, I liked and still like my dad's poem. I think it is an honest report of what happened to us. I hate to admit it, but I actually like my dad's description of me as a little boy. I sound pretty cute in a gimped out CP way. I also like seeing my mom and dad together again. Even though it's just words in the air from a long time ago, I like a lot of other things about the poem too. If I'm being honest, and even though I don't like people staring at me, I do like everybody saying my name. I guess I have to admit it. I kind of enjoy being famous. That's a really good quote. Could we add that to it? Sean enjoys being famous. That would be a great fact to add to our facts here. When the Pulitzer came, I got a kick out of seeing my picture from the book's cover on TV all the time. My dad appeared on 23 TV talk shows, news reports, and other programs in 18 months following the announcement of the award. So Dad was on 23 talk shows and news reports. That's a great fact after his poem became famous. It's pretty weird being the country's most famous retard when with my memory, I bet that I'm actually one of the smartest kids anywhere. My dad, after writing Sean, became pretty famous. But the fact is that the poem just made him a professional what? Victim? Whiner? Abandoning deadbeat dad? Dad left our family because he couldn't stand watching my seizures. Shows what he knows. Did I mention that I love my seizures? Okay, great fact. Sean loves his seizures. So it's a new thing we just learned. Okay, and a question that I want to ask myself is, why does Sean love his seizures? Because he just described how hard they hurt when he was little. But why now does Sean love his seizures? So that's a great thing to add to our questions too. that they're doorways to a place at least as real and far better than reality? Did I mention that I love my seizures? So much for the Pulitzer Prize. Just because you win it doesn't mean you know everything. Okay, so that's the end of chapter 5. And guys, we're going to keep working on that autobiography. So you've started your first paragraph about yourself, because an autobiography is about you. Okay? And you started with a hook. That's either a question, a fact, a statistic, or an onomatopoeia, and that's a sound. And then you're going to write a little bit about you. Now, I want you to write about 3 things that you really enjoy doing. So then your next line, after you tell about who's in your family and where you live, and you say, I really enjoy doing these 3 things. Okay? And that's what you're going to add. And then write about those 3 things. So that's the next thing that you're going to put in that initial paragraph. Okay? And while I give you some time the rest of today to do that, I want you to go ahead and add more to that first paragraph. And then I want you to make sure that you are logging into the Canvas quiz that is each day. The Canvas quiz each day is your participation grade for the day. And it also is that focused reminder about what it is you need to be doing. And I will count it as your exit ticket. So it's your attendance and your exit ticket, and it's the focus of what you're doing that day. So make sure you're doing that each and every day. Answer that Canvas quiz. It's only a 1-question quiz, and it's not difficult. Have a great rest of your day, Team Alabama. We are an awesome team, and you are awesome. Can't wait to meet you actually in person. If you have any real questions, you may always call the school, 641-2059, and I'm extension 413, or you may email me at adishman.acs.c.net and email your questions to me as well. Take care. Have an awesome day.